And hello, this is Eamonn O'Brien, and you're so welcome to PSA Ireland. And we're talking today about growing virtually. That's a very exciting topic, and we're covering a whole plethora of different things. But one of the things that I'd like to focus on now is the importance of paying attention to not just what we're doing it, but where are we doing it in the context of change online. And I have an awesome person to talk about how the rules are kind of changing in terms of the online space. All the way from Atlanta, Georgia, it is Jamie Turner. Jamie, hello.
Good to see you. Glad to be here. Always great to catch up with you. I always enjoy our conversations, and I know this one will be just as fascinating, mostly because you ask great questions and you also have great things to say. So I learn as much from you as maybe you learn a little bit from me. So this will be fun.
Flattery works wonderfully for me, and mine's a pint of Guinness. and just for those who don't know about you, Jamie, let me fill folks in a little bit. So you are an international keynote speaker. You have an extraordinary acumen in the whole area of mobile marketing. You are also the founder of 60-Second Marketer and the author of a number of books, both, and I'll check this out, I'll get this correct, How to Make Money with Social Media, how could I not remember that, and Go Mobile. So an awesome guy to talk about what's happening.
Yeah, great to be here. Can't wait to dive in and learn a few things and talk about a few things.
Excellent. Well, perhaps for the speakers that are here, we can get into, first of all, some of the big challenges that have happened and are happening in the context of where and how content is being consumed. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because there's a lot going on.
There's an opportunity and a threat going on out there. The opportunity side of the equation is because of digital media and the advent of inexpensive digital media, we can go out and communicate and share our content around the globe. In fact, you'd mentioned I do speeches around the globe. I do, and I've been to all over the place, but Egypt, Amsterdam, all that sort of stuff. What I notice, no matter what part of the world I'm speaking in, is that the people in the audience are up to speed on everything, every last piece of information. There's nothing that they don't already, that they're very, very progressive about things. And that's because information goes around the globe instantly now, where in my youth, it used to take time for the newspapers to write about things and then it would go overseas, whatever it was. Net is the opportunity for speakers is that you can create content and disseminate it around the globe pretty quickly. The challenge on that side of the equation is that, okay, well, why would I go see somebody live when I can go and watch their YouTube video? So what you have to do is figure out a way to use the information you're sharing as bait, as enough great content for people to go, I can't wait to see this person live because they're going to give me additional content. I'm going to be able to ask them questions. I'm going to be able to engage with them. I'm going to be able to get specific about what's going on in my life. So that's the opportunity and the threat. The opportunity is you can go global. The threat is it sometimes can be perceived that why would I go see somebody live and pay for them when I can get their YouTube video for free?
Well, absolutely that. And I suppose there's also a broader context. And one of the things that you and I talked about in a recent conversation is about the explosion in terms of what people are consuming through mobile devices. And in particular, I came across something which was shocking but true, which is that between now and 2019, so we're not talking about long, we're looking at a 5 to 10-fold increase in the amount of content being consumed there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It really is changing. If you think about your smartphone, it's really not a smartphone as much as it's a remote control for your life. So it gives you the ability to access newspapers, to open your garage door with your garage door opener, check your bank balance, all that sort of stuff. So it's really a remote control for our lives. So in the end, what is going to happen is people are just going to carry it with them everywhere, which they already do. And in fact, there was a research. I hope this isn't inappropriate. I'm about to say something a little bit sketchy, but
we'll do this. No,
right, do this. But there was a research study done by Harris Interactive that found that 20% of those surveyed had used their smartphones during sex. So what they're doing with their smartphones, I don't know, but I do know that that gives an indication of how prevalent this tool is in our lives. And again, it goes back to that. Really, that's more of the opportunity side of the equation, because if we're able to broadcast our content out to people using multiple channels, the distribution network is a mobile device. So if you're on YouTube or Vimeo or your blog or whatever it is, the distribution channel can be the mobile device. And that gives you the ability to be with people wherever they may be, whether they're sitting on a park bench or in their office, it doesn't matter. But it's an opportunity on that side of the equation.
Absolutely, because it is literally anywhere and any time. Although you realize, of course, that particular statistic that you mentioned can possibly have included the owners of an iPhone S4 or before, because the battery life is so low.
There you have it. Absolutely true. So,
but in a practical sense, again, for speakers who either have some presence or they are creating a better presence, are looking to do that in terms of what they're doing online, because the way in which people are consuming content and what they're consuming is changing. How is that likely to affect the priorities that a speaker maybe should be thinking about?
I think the primary thing, here's the way I view things, and I think this answers your question, which is basically, when I was younger, I worked with my father. He'd been a madman, who's somebody who worked on Madison Avenue in the United States and was an advertising guy, worked with David Ogilvy, all that stuff. And as he grew older, he sort of went into semi-retirement, joined my company, and we worked together. And I noticed he was always engaged with new technologies, new cultural things. I mean, we could talk about the newest singer on the scene, and he knew about them, knew their music, all that sort of stuff. And I remember thinking, here's a guy in his 70s. I want to be like that. I want to embrace new technology. So the reason I tell that story is I've grown older. I've made sure not to get intimidated by new technologies, because I think there's a natural human instinct to poo-poo, sort of new technologies. Well, why can't we? My wife hates technology. She's like, why do I need a smartphone? Why do I need all this stuff? The good old days when we used to go down the street and knock on doors and talk face to face, that's great. But the bottom line is you need to be in the 21st century. So net for everybody watching this is embrace the new technologies, learn about it, figure out new ways that you can use that technology in order to grow your own business. So one of the latest and greatest things is Periscope, which is a way to broadcast off of your smartphone, what's going on for you. You can use it as a lecture tool or a teaching tool. There's another one called Blab. That's another tool that is basically a way to have a conversation with 4 different people, and people can watch that conversation. If you think about the impact of that and how the people who are embracing that new technology are now able to distribute their content to future prospects, speaking prospects, business prospects, all that sort of stuff. And do it in a way that's interactive. It's a two-way street, because people can jump in on the conversation and ask questions. That's a huge opportunity. And the starting point for it is, let me not be afraid of new technology. Let me embrace new technology. Let me use new technology, and let me understand that if I screw up, so be it. That tomorrow's a new day. Digital is instantaneous, and nobody will remember what I screwed up yesterday, and I'll be able to do it right today. So that's the net for me, is embrace new technologies, view it as an opportunity rather than a threat, and then dive into it and use it as a way to grow your business.
Yeah, I like that mentality. And I think that the truth is that, you can't possibly understand something if you don't jump in. But therein lies an issue, which is that professionally, if people are experimenting with things and they don't really understand how they work, I guess you can understand why people might be thinking, well, gee, if I do this, I could dirty my bib here, and maybe my audiences will see this and think, who is that numpty?
So let me address that. That's a great question. And I think it's on everybody's mind, is that fear of looking stupid. And we all have that. Years ago, I gave a speech at an audience. This was in the days when it was I had a cassette deck of radio commercial I was going to show. I had a VHS and I had a PowerPoint presentation that was being projected. So I go in and I set everything up, and the projector doesn't work. And so the audience is like going, what are we going to do here? I said, don't worry, folks. I've got a VHS. I've got a cassette. This is all going to be fine. I'm just going to do it. What started to happen was the audience had empathy for me, because they were like, the guy's up there, he's doing the best he can. It's not his fault that the projector broke. And so I actually had them on my side. So then I get to the VHS thing. The VHS didn't work. And of course, then I could say, don't worry, we're going to have the cassette later. The cassette didn't work. Nothing worked. And it was one of the best speeches I'd given in a long time, mostly because the audience was empathetic and they were listening and leaning in and listening to me and laughing a little harder at the jokes, because they were like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes, but I'm going to make him feel more comfortable because he's, up there with no props and all that sort of stuff. And plus, of course, I got that little boost of adrenaline, which was, now I really have to turn on the afterburners and make this a great speech, because I don't have any of my tools that I'm used to using. And it ended up being great. I think the same would happen for anybody using Blab or Periscope or any of the newer tools out there, is that if you screw up, people get it. They're forgiving. They're empathetic typically, and they'll be back. And it makes you seem more human too. It makes you just seem more like, oh, good, this isn't a scary, figure on my computer screen. It's a human being who is struggling with technology just like I do. So I think it's again an opportunity rather than a threat.
And I think that's a good way to think about it, because the truth is, the first time you hit publish on a blog post, the first time you do the same with a podcast, with a video, I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure you will have had the same experience, it is not perfection at the outset.
Yeah.
You find by doing things that you figure out what works, what doesn't work, and eventually you'll get rid of the things that weren't so hot. And the truth is, online, our attention span is that.
Yeah.
So unless you did something that is really quite extraordinary, you're really not going to have a viral impact where people are going to put you up for the Numpty of the Year award.
Totally true. It's the next day, people forgot about it. There's so much content out there right now that we're flooded with too much content, and 24 hours later, people forgotten it. They're on to the next thing.
Yeah. So for people in the speaking business who want to grow their presence, and they recognize that the world has gone more mobile, that people are consuming more visual content, that they're reading less, they're listening more, they're watching more, all of that's true. What are the biggest cul-de-sacs that you come across that clients sometimes tend to go down these things, and really they're spinning wheels and are, just wasting time in general?
So here's an interesting thing. You and I both love cultures, and so this is an off-topic question, and then I'll answer your question. But in the United States, a cul-de-sac, of course, is the end of a street where you turn around. And so I'm wondering if there is a different meaning for it, or if you just meant...
Yeah, so basically a closed-ended road where you basically...
Okay, closed-ended road. So what are the dead-end streets?
You get stuck, yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting. Just given that you're in Ireland, I was like, I wonder what cul-de-sac actually really means in French. So, that's
me, because I speak American, I shouldn't have got that wrong.
No. But the key thing to remember is that we this is Web 3.0. We have an opportunity now to disseminate our information as broadly as possible, and that these again are ways that we can go ahead and do that and engage people. The key thing that you don't want to do, I think, is end up not embracing things and ending up just saying, hey, I'm not going to dive into this because, again, I'm afraid of it or anything like that. But the net is, if you're going down this path and saying, I'm going to go ahead and do everything I possibly can to get as broad an audience as I possibly can, and deepen my engagement with that audience in multiple channels, then what I'm going to end up doing is having a better opportunity for a live speaking gig. But let me more specifically answer your question about sort of, what are the...
I want to come back to something you said in a second, because I think we've hit a real jackpot there, but go on.
Okay, cool. The key thing to remember is, you'd mentioned earlier, short attention spans. People, when you're using any of these technologies, remember, People have short attention spans. The other thing to think about is if you think of your business as a speaker, as a hub and spoke, that whole model of your goal is to drive people to your website so they can contact you. And then that's the hub. And then the spokes are all the things that you use to drive them there. So it's social media, it's mobile marketing, it's blogs, it's ebooks, it's whatever it is. All of that's intended to drive people to the website. You have to kind of do all of the spokes in the wheel in order to make the wheel go down the highway smoothly. So if you're doing a handful, the odds of that wheel functioning well are very, very limited. But if you're doing everything, and I know I'm not trying to say spread yourself too thin, I'm just saying try to do as many as you can well, and then that will ultimately snowball on itself and grow and grow and grow because you've got a bigger and bigger presence. And again, your goal is to get them to the website and then keep them at the website once they're there.
No, I think that's exactly right. And actually, just building on what you were saying earlier on, and then you actually came back full circle, not to use a pun on this, is the power and importance of having a multiple strand approach to what you do. Yeah. The key or the trick is to make sure that it's integrated.
I agree. And think about, so integration is one thing, but also human nature you're tapping into, which is if you have 100 people in the room, a certain percentage are going to be blog readers, a certain percentage are going to want to look at an infographic, a certain percentage are going to want to watch a video, a certain percentage are going to want to listen to a podcast. Your job is to be able to meet them with their technology that they're most comfortable with across as many technologies as you possibly can within reason, knowing that we all have work to do and things like that. But if you can do that, then you're opening up the channels for people to connect with you and bond with you. Each one of those channels is actually going to be pretty small, but in the end, they add up to enough enough eyeballs that you get people sort of saying, "Hey, this is somebody we should invite in to speak at our next conference."
Exactly that, and then there's also the cumulative effect. As you know, in social media, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, each time you put something out, you only get a small percentage of folks who get to see it. So cumulatively, you know, frequency types reach. Going back to your dad's mad.
Yeah, right.
As a dyed-in-the-wool former advertiser, I can tell you reach times frequency in the right place does pay. So, so maybe we can round things out and bring things down to a number of actions or challenges that we can share with the speakers that we have here today and those who maybe couldn't make it here today. So when it comes to thinking about a better online presence and growing your business virtually, what are the most important questions? Maybe no more than 2 or 3 things that speakers need to consider and to answer.
A couple of things. One is thinking backwards. So by that, I mean, get inside the mind of your prospect and think backwards. What is their need? So one of the things that comes up for speakers, and I'm a fellow speaker, is there's nobody in a corporation that is typically, has the title, vice president of hiring speakers. The person who hires a speaker can be anybody from the CEO down to the receptionist and everybody in between. So it makes it very hard to target people. So what you have to do is attract them to you. And the only way to do that is to think backwards. Get inside of their minds. What would they be interested in from a speaker point of view? What would make you appeal to them like a magnet? So that's the primary thing. And then just making sure we go back to that, distributing your content across as many channels as possible so you give as many opportunities as you can for people to engage with you. So think of it as fishing. If you go out and fish with one fishing rod, that might be YouTube. If you fish with 2, you now might have a blog as well. If you fish with 3 fishing rods, now you're doing podcasting. All of a sudden, that's more hooks in the water, and you're more likely to catch a fish that way.
Oh, absolutely. And also more likely to be found, of course, because there's content for Google to find.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Yeah.
The word dynamic appeared in a sentence. What a splendid idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and if we were to put that again, even in more brass tack terms, if you think about somebody who maybe has some content today and they're building out content, supposing, because sometimes we get overwhelmed. Sometimes, all the time, we tend to get overwhelmed. There's so much stuff going on. And we say, okay, so 90 days, that's a good chunk of time.
Mhm.
If you were setting somebody today who has decent content, but maybe doesn't have the right kind of outreach,
Mhm.
a 90-day challenge, what's achievable even in that time frame, just in terms of quick wins?
Yeah, I'll answer your question. I am gonna suggest that the ability for a speaker to attract people in like a magnet takes time to build. And
It
so
does.
it's really about building, and I know you'd agree with that.
Yeah.
It's really about building a brand over the course of time. So, but the short
3 to 4 years in the context of online branding, but yeah.
Yeah, it really is. The short, quick wins would be, here's what I would do. My area of specialty is marketing. So when people hire me as a speaker, they want to talk about marketing. I would go out and do content on my blog and in my podcast and in the other channels that would be things that would be have their own magnet attracting to them. So it would be typically what people like to do, what they read and click through on are things like 5 most common mistakes people make with mobile marketing. Because what happens is people go, I want to make sure I'm not making one of those 5 mistakes. I better check this thing out. And so it has a greater tendency to attract people. So the quick hits would be a couple of things. If it were me, I would write irreverent, counterintuitive blog posts that say something that's different from what everybody else is saying. So if everybody is saying Steve Jobs was the greatest CEO of all time, I would say why Steve Jobs was the worst CEO of all time, because then people have to read that because everybody's writing about the other thing. So point number 1 is say something semi-controversial. Point number 2 would be distribute it across as many channels as you possibly can. And point number 3 is maybe stay focused on that topic for a little while. Maybe not Steve Jobs, every blog you write is about Steve Jobs, but it might be a series of blog posts about CEOs who were the best CEOs ever or the worst CEOs ever or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you've got sort of a consistency to your content. So those 3 things I think would probably be the quick hits that you could do over the course of 90 days and get some traction.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think, again, as always, hitting the nail on the head, because if people don't get emotionally connected immediately to whatever the title is of what you're selling, nothing else is really going to matter, because then it's gone. It's not, it hasn't happened.
Very good point. It actually, there's studies, I'm sure you've seen them, that where they scan MRI of your brain, and the more emotional things are, the more you remember things, which is why TV commercials tend to make you laugh or cry. Very few of them, not few, but the most effective ones will make you laugh or cry because you'll remember it afterwards. And that's sadly, most people, when they read my headlines, cry. So I'm trying to work on getting them to laugh a little more. But then they'll be laughing at me. So
All right. Well, listen, Jamie, that's been absolutely awesome. And can I thank you for joining us today? And I know that you're happy to take some questions as well. So obviously, directly after this, because in playing this, obviously, then we haven't gone live on the day. So this is an after the fact thing, and proving yet again that as a marketer, you need to wear belts and braces when you do any form of marketing. But questions are welcomed. So if you have any questions, then we're delighted to take them on board. And Jamie, can I again thank you on behalf of PSA Ireland for joining with us today.
Always great to see you, my friend, and glad to be here. And I'm glad that everybody was here to listen, and looking forward to meeting some of you guys face to face sometime in the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.